Melissa Chen never imagined that swiping right on a dating app would be the last decision she would ever make. At 29 years old, this pediatric nurse from Denver, Colorado, thought she had finally found the love she had been searching for. 3 days after matching with a charming stranger on Tinder, Melissa disappeared without a trace. The only evidence of what happened to her was discovered by a jogger near Chatfield Reservoir on a cold March morning in 2023. A pile of navy blue medical scrubs soaked in blood, torn and discarded near the water's edge. The name tag still attached read Melissa Chen, RN, but Melissa's body was nowhere to be found. What investigators would soon discover was far more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. Melissa wasn't the first woman to fall victim to the monster hiding behind a stolen face on a dating app. She was the 6th, and the man responsible had been hunting vulnerable women across multiple states for 4 years, perfecting his methods with each kill. This is the story of how online dating became a hunting ground for a serial predator, how a nurse who dedicated her life to saving others became prey, and how one woman's tragic death would expose a killer who believed he was untouchable. This is the story of Melissa Chen and the Tinder predator who stole her life. Melissa Chen had always been the kind of person who put others first. Born and raised in Boulder, Colorado, she grew up in a loving home with her parents Robert and Linda Chen. Robert worked as an accountant for a local firm, while Linda taught elementary school. They raised Melissa with strong values about hard work, compassion, and service to others. From a young age, Melissa knew she wanted to help people. In high school, she volunteered at a local nursing home, spending her weekends reading to elderly residents and helping them with activities. Her teachers described her as empathetic, dedicated, and genuinely invested in making the world a better place. After graduating from the University of Colorado with a nursing degree, Melissa specialized in pediatrics. She loved working with children, and they loved her back. Her colleagues at Denver Children's Hospital, where she had worked for the past 5 years, consistently praised her patient care and her ability to connect with even the most frightened young patients. Parents would request Melissa specifically when their children needed medical care, knowing she would treat them with kindness and respect. At 29, Melissa lived alone in a small apartment at 2847 Maple Grove Avenue in Denver. The apartment was modest but comfortable, decorated with photos of her family and friends, houseplants she carefully tended, and a small bookshelf filled with medical textbooks and mystery novels. She had always loved true crime podcasts, never imagining that one day her own story would become the subject of countless investigations and documentaries. Melissa had been single for 2 years following a difficult breakup with her college boyfriend, Marcus. The relationship had lasted 3 years, but ultimately they wanted different things. Marcus accepted a job in California, and Melissa wasn't willing to leave her family and her position at Denver Children's Hospital. The breakup had been painful, but necessary. For the first year after the split, Melissa threw herself into her work, taking extra shifts and avoiding the dating scene entirely. But by early 2023, she felt ready to try again. Her best friend, Katie Morrison, a fellow nurse at Denver Children's Hospital, had been gently encouraging her to get back out there. Katie had known Melissa since nursing school. They had bonded during their first clinical rotation, both terrified of making mistakes, but supporting each other through the steep learning curve. Over the years, they became inseparable. They worked the same shifts when possible, went hiking together on their days off, and spent hours talking about their dreams and fears. Katie had recently gotten engaged to her longtime boyfriend, and she wanted Melissa to experience that same happiness. "You deserve someone who appreciates how amazing you are," Katie would say during their lunch breaks in the hospital cafeteria. "Someone who sees what I see. A smart, funny, beautiful woman who saves kids' lives for a living." Melissa would laugh and change the subject, but deep down, she did feel lonely. She missed having a partner to share her life with. She missed the intimacy of a relationship, the comfort of having someone to come home to after a difficult shift at the hospital. In March of 2023, Katie finally convinced Melissa to create a Tinder profile. Online dating felt strange and uncomfortable to Melissa. She had always met people organically, through school or work or mutual friends. The idea of presenting herself through a curated set of photos and a brief bio seemed artificial and superficial. But Katie insisted that this was how people dated now, and that Melissa needed to adapt to modern realities. They spent an evening at Melissa's apartment, carefully selecting photos for her profile. They chose a picture of Melissa in her scrubs at the hospital, smiling warmly at the camera. Katie said it showed her caring nature and her dedication to her profession. They added photos from hiking trips in the Rocky Mountains, showing Melissa in her element surrounded by nature. There was a photo of her laughing with her golden retriever Bailey, a rescue dog she had adopted 2 years earlier. For her bio, they kept it simple and genuine. Saving lives by day, searching for adventure by night. Katie thought it struck the right balance between serious and playful. Melissa activated her profile on March 1st, 2023. For the first 2 weeks, she swiped through profiles half-heartedly, not particularly impressed with what she saw. Most men seemed to be looking for something casual, or their profiles were filled with gym selfies and generic quotes about living life to the fullest. Melissa wanted something real, someone with substance and depth. She was beginning to think online dating wasn't for her when, on March 15th, she matched with someone who seemed different. His name was Derek Hoffman, according to his profile. He was 34 years old, worked as a software engineer, and his photos showed an attractive man with dark hair and an easy smile. In one picture, he was hiking on what looked like a mountain trail. In another, he was kneeling next to a beautiful golden retriever, the dog's tongue hanging out happily. The bio was brief but appealing. Recently moved to Denver from Seattle. Love hiking, trying new restaurants, and my dog Cooper. Looking for someone genuine to explore this amazing city with. Melissa felt a spark of interest. He seemed normal, stable, like someone who had his life together. The fact that he loved hiking and had a dog immediately endeared him to her. She sent him a message, keeping it casual. "Nice dog. Golden retrievers are the best." The response came within minutes. "Thanks. Cooper is my best friend. I see you have one too. What's your dog's name?" They began chatting, and the conversation flowed naturally. Derek asked about her work, and Melissa told him about being a pediatric nurse. He seemed genuinely interested, asking thoughtful questions about her day-to-day responsibilities and what made her choose that specialty. Derek told her he worked for a company called Tech Vision Solutions, doing remote software development. He explained that he had just moved to Denver a few months earlier for a change of scenery after going through a difficult breakup in Seattle. Melissa could relate to that experience. Over the next 3 days, they exchanged hundreds of messages. They discovered they had similar tastes in music, both loving indie rock and folk. They both enjoyed Italian food and had a shared obsession with true crime podcasts. Derek mentioned he was listening to a series about unsolved murders in the Pacific Northwest, and Melissa recommended one of her favorites about cold cases in Colorado. The irony of that particular detail would later haunt everyone who knew Melissa. Derek seemed almost too perfect. He was attentive without being overwhelming, funny without trying too hard, and he expressed genuine interest in getting to know her as a person, rather than just seeing her as a potential romantic conquest. When he suggested meeting for dinner on March 18th, Melissa felt genuinely excited for the first time in months. She told Katie about the upcoming date during their shift on March 17th, and Katie's reaction was mixed with excitement and caution. "That's great," Katie said while they were restocking medical supplies in one of the pediatric units. "But you're meeting him in public, right? You're not going to his place or anything?" "Of course not," Melissa replied, slightly annoyed at the implication that she would be careless. We're meeting at Rioja downtown. It's a nice restaurant with lots of people around. Katie nodded, but continued to press the safety issue. And you'll share your location with me? And check in every hour? Melissa agreed to all of Katie's conditions, understanding that her friend was just looking out for her. They had both heard horror stories about online dating gone wrong. They had both listened to enough true crime podcasts to know that meeting strangers from the internet carried risks. But Melissa felt confident that Derek was who he said he was. They had talked so much over the past 3 days that she felt like she already knew him. His messages were thoughtful and genuine, never pushing for anything inappropriate or making her uncomfortable. He seemed like a decent person who, like her, was just trying to find a meaningful connection in a world that increasingly felt superficial and disconnected. March 18th, 2023, arrived with clear skies and unseasonably warm weather for early spring in Denver. Melissa finished her shift at the hospital at 3 in the afternoon, drove home to her apartment, and spent 2 hours getting ready for the date. She wanted to look nice without appearing like she was trying too hard. She settled on dark jeans, a soft blue sweater that brought out her eyes, and minimal makeup. She checked her appearance in the mirror multiple times, nervous butterflies fluttering in her stomach. She hadn't been on a first date in over 2 years, and the anticipation was both exciting and terrifying. Before leaving her apartment, she texted Katie with her location and a promise to check in regularly throughout the evening. Katie responded with multiple heart emojis and a warning to trust her instincts if anything felt wrong. Rioja restaurant was located at 1431 Larimer Street in downtown Denver, known for its upscale Spanish and Mediterranean cuisine. Melissa arrived at 7 in the evening, exactly on time. She stood outside the restaurant for a moment, taking a deep breath and steadying her nerves. Through the large windows, she could see the warm interior filled with other diners, the soft glow of candlelight on tables, and the bustling energy of a popular Friday night spot. She walked inside and gave her name to the hostess, who informed her that Derek had already arrived and was waiting at their table. Melissa followed the hostess through the restaurant, her heart beating faster with each step. And then she saw him. Derek Hoffman was standing next to their table, smiling warmly. He looked exactly like his photos, which was the first relief. Melissa had heard stories of people using heavily filtered or outdated pictures on dating apps, but Derek was exactly who he had presented himself to be, at least physically. He was tall, probably around 6 feet, with dark hair styled casually and warm brown eyes. He wore dark jeans and a button-down shirt, dressed nicely but not overly formal. When Melissa approached, he extended his hand for a handshake, which she appreciated. Some men went in for a hug on first dates, which always felt presumptuous and uncomfortable. The handshake was respectful, acknowledging that they were still essentially strangers, despite their digital intimacy over the past 3 days. "Melissa, it's so great to finally meet you in person," Derek said with genuine enthusiasm. "You look even more beautiful than your photos." Melissa felt herself blush at the compliment. "Thank you. You too. I mean, you look like your photos. Which is good." She laughed nervously at her awkward phrasing, and Derek laughed along with her, immediately putting her at ease. They sat down, and the conversation picked up right where their text messages had left off. There was no awkward silence, no struggling to find things to talk about. Derek asked about her shift at the hospital, and Melissa told him about a particularly challenging case involving a 7-year-old with complications from pneumonia. Derek listened attentively, asking follow-up questions and showing genuine empathy for both Melissa and her young patient. The dinner lasted 5 hours. They ordered appetizers, entrees, dessert, and multiple glasses of wine, losing track of time as they talked. Derek was charming and engaging, telling stories about his work in software development, his move from Seattle to Denver, and his love of outdoor activities. He talked about growing up in the Midwest, his close relationship with his mother who had passed away from cancer 3 years earlier, and his desire to build a stable, meaningful life with the right person. Everything he said resonated with Melissa. She found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected, telling him about her own family, her passion for pediatric nursing, her dreams of maybe working internationally with Doctors Without Borders someday. Derek's responses were thoughtful and supportive, never dismissive or condescending. When Melissa mentioned that she had been single for 2 years after a difficult breakup, Derek nodded understandingly and shared his own story of heartbreak in Seattle. His girlfriend of 4 years had cheated on him with a mutual friend, and the betrayal had left him devastated. Moving to Denver was about starting fresh, he explained. Looking back later, investigators and psychologists would analyze this first date in detail, identifying the subtle manipulation tactics that Derek, whose real name was Vincent Crawford, employed so effectively. He was love-bombing Melissa, showering her with attention and affection, creating an intense connection in a compressed time frame. He was mirroring her interests and values, making himself seem like the perfect match. He was sharing vulnerable personal stories designed to create emotional intimacy and trust. But in the moment, sitting across from Derek in that candlelit restaurant, Melissa simply felt happy. She felt seen and understood in a way she hadn't experienced in years. When Derek walked her to her car at midnight, he asked if she would like to see him again. Melissa didn't hesitate. "I would love that," she said. Derek suggested a hike the next day at Red Rocks Park. Melissa agreed immediately, excited to combine 2 things she loved: being in nature and spending time with this intriguing man. They hugged goodbye, and Melissa drove home with a genuine smile on her face. She texted Katie as soon as she got back to her apartment. "Best first date ever. He's amazing." Katie responded with celebration emojis, but also repeated her earlier warning. "Just be careful and keep me posted." Melissa went to bed that night feeling hopeful about her future for the first time in a long while. She had no way of knowing that the man she had just spent 5 hours with was not who he claimed to be. Derek Hoffman did not work for Tech Vision Solutions. He had never lived in Seattle. His mother was not dead. His golden retriever Cooper did not exist. The man sitting across from Melissa at dinner was Vincent Crawford, a 36-year-old serial predator who had been hunting women through dating apps for 4 years. He had studied Melissa for weeks before creating his fake profile, learning her routines, her vulnerabilities, her desires. He knew exactly what to say to make her feel special and safe, and he was already planning how he would kill her. The next morning, Melissa woke up energized despite getting only 5 hours of sleep. She had to work the morning shift at Denver Children's Hospital, 7 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. She texted Derek from the hospital during her lunch break, confirming their plans to meet at Red Rocks Park at 3 that afternoon. Derek responded immediately with enthusiasm. "Can't wait to see you again. Bring Bailey if you want. Cooper would love to meet another golden." Melissa thought it was sweet that Derek wanted their dogs to meet. It felt like a natural progression in getting to know each other, introducing the important beings in their lives. She finished her shift and drove home to change into hiking clothes and pick up Bailey. The golden retriever was excited as always, tail wagging enthusiastically at the prospect of an outing. Melissa loaded Bailey into her 2015 Honda Civic and drove to Red Rocks Park, arriving at exactly 3 in the afternoon. Red Rocks Park was a stunning natural area just outside Denver, famous for its dramatic red sandstone formations and outdoor amphitheater. The hiking trails offered spectacular views of the surrounding landscape, and on a beautiful March afternoon like this one, the park was filled with other hikers, joggers, and families enjoying the sunshine. Melissa parked in the main lot and looked around for Derek. She spotted him standing near the trailhead, waving at her. As she approached with Bailey on a leash, she noticed something that should have been a red flag. Derek was alone. No dog. "Where's Cooper?" Melissa asked, trying to hide her disappointment. Derek's face fell with what appeared to be genuine regret. "I'm so sorry. I completely forgot he had a grooming appointment this afternoon. I couldn't reschedule it because they're booked out for weeks. I hope Bailey isn't too disappointed." Melissa accepted the explanation, though something about it felt off. If Cooper had a grooming appointment, wouldn't Derek have remembered that before suggesting a hike where the dogs would meet? But she pushed the thought aside, not wanting to be suspicious or judgmental. People forgot things sometimes. It wasn't a big deal. They began hiking on one of the moderate trails, Bailey trotting happily beside them. The conversation continued to flow easily, though Melissa noticed that Derek skillfully avoided certain topics. When she asked about his family, he gave vague answers about having a sister somewhere on the East Coast, but not being particularly close with her. When she asked about his apartment in Denver, he described the general area, Cherry Creek, but didn't offer specific details or an invitation to visit. When Melissa tried to take a selfie of the two of them with the red rocks in the background, Derek politely declined, saying he looked terrible and sweaty from the hike. These small moments of evasion should have added up to a pattern of concerning behavior, but Melissa was caught up in the excitement of a new connection. She was also falling victim to something psychologists call confirmation bias. She wanted Derek to be genuine, so she interpreted his behavior in the most charitable light possible. What Melissa couldn't have known was that Derek had carefully calculated every aspect of their interaction. He never brought a dog to their second date because there was no dog to bring. The Cooper in his Tinder photos belonged to a man in Austin, Texas, named Michael Torres, whose entire dating profile had been stolen and repurposed by Vincent Crawford. Derek avoided selfies because he knew that photos could be traced, reverse-searched, and potentially connected to his real identity. He was vague about his living situation because the address he had provided, 1523 Cherry Creek Drive, was not his actual residence. It was a corporate rental unit that he had accessed through hacking into the building's reservation system. He would only have access to that apartment for a limited time, just long enough to execute his plan. Despite these warning signs that Melissa missed or dismissed, the hike was pleasant. They talked for 3 hours, climbing to scenic overlooks and discussing everything from their favorite books to their thoughts on current events. Derek demonstrated knowledge about topics that interested Melissa, from healthcare policy to environmental conservation. He asked about her goals and dreams, seeming genuinely invested in her answers. By the time they finished the hike and returned to the parking lot, Melissa felt even more convinced that she had found something special. As they said goodbye, Derek brought up the possibility of a third date. "Would you want to come over to my place tomorrow night?" he asked. "I'm actually a pretty good cook. I could make us dinner, Italian if you're interested." Melissa hesitated for just a moment. Going to a man's apartment on a third date felt fast. But then again, everything about this connection had moved quickly. They had talked for 3 days straight before even meeting. They had already spent 8 hours together between the dinner and the hike, and Derek had been nothing but respectful and genuine in all their interactions. Plus, Melissa told herself, she was a good judge of character. She worked with people every day in the hospital, reading their emotions and intentions. She would know if something was wrong. She would sense danger if Derek was actually dangerous. "I would love that," Melissa said, sealing her fate with those 4 words. Derek's face lit up with apparent joy. "Perfect. Tomorrow at 8. I'll text you the address." They hugged goodbye, and Melissa drove home feeling excited about where this relationship might lead. She called Katie on the drive, putting her on speakerphone to give her an update about the second date. "It went great," Melissa said enthusiastically. "He's even better in person than he was over text. We hiked for 3 hours and just talked about everything. He's so easy to be with." "That's wonderful," Katie replied, though her voice carried a note of caution. "But did you say you're going to his apartment tomorrow?" Melissa immediately became defensive, anticipating Katie's concerns. "Don't start with the safety lecture. I've known him 3 whole days now. We've talked constantly. I can read people, Katie. I'm a nurse. I know when something's off, and there's nothing off about Derek." Katie tried to push back. "I just think you should meet in public a few more times before going to someone's house. You don't really know him yet, no matter how much you've talked." Melissa's tone became sharp. "You're the one who told me to try online dating. You said I needed to put myself out there and take chances. So that's what I'm doing. Can you be happy for me instead of acting like I'm making a terrible decision?" Katie backed down, not wanting to fight with her best friend. "You're right. I'm sorry. I just worry about you. But I'm sure it will be fine. Derek seems nice from everything you've told me. Just please text me when you get there and check in during the evening, okay?" Melissa agreed to the safety protocols, and they ended the call on good terms. But Katie couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in her stomach. Something about the speed of this relationship and Derek's reluctance to take photos bothered her, but she told herself she was probably being overprotective. After all, what were the odds that Melissa would randomly match with a dangerous person on Tinder? The odds, it turned out, were higher than either of them could have imagined. March 20th, 2023 was a Monday. Melissa worked another morning shift at Denver Children's Hospital, 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. It was a long shift, 12 hours of caring for sick children and supporting worried parents. By the time Melissa clocked out at 7, she was exhausted, but still excited about her dinner date with Derek. She had changed out of her scrubs and into a casual dress she had brought from home, touching up her makeup in the hospital bathroom before leaving. Katie found her in the locker room as Melissa was getting ready to leave. "You look beautiful," Katie said, then added with forced cheerfulness, "Have a great time tonight. Be safe." Melissa hugged her friend. "I will. I promise. Stop worrying so much. I'll text you at 9 to let you know everything's good." Katie watched Melissa leave the hospital, a sinking feeling in her chest that she couldn't explain. Later, she would tell police that she had an intuition. Something bad was going to happen, but she hadn't known how to articulate it without sounding paranoid or controlling. She would spend years wondering if she could have said something, done something, to prevent what happened next. Melissa got into her Honda Civic and entered the address Derek had texted her that morning into her phone's GPS. 1523, Cherry Creek Drive, Apartment 12B. The drive took 20 minutes through evening traffic. Melissa sent one last text to Katie at 7:43 in the evening. "Heading to his place now. We'll check in at 9 with a red heart emoji." She arrived at the address at 7:50 in the evening. The building was nice, an upscale apartment complex in the Cherry Creek neighborhood, with a doorman and modern architecture. Melissa felt reassured by the professional appearance of the building. This confirmed Derek's story about having a good job and living comfortably. She parked in the visitor lot, checked her appearance one more time in the rearview mirror, and walked into the lobby. The doorman, a middle-aged man named James Patterson, greeted her politely and asked who she was there to see. "Derek Hoffman in apartment 12B, Melissa said. The doorman checked his computer and nodded, directing her to the elevators. Later, James Patterson would tell police that he remembered a young woman matching Melissa's description entering the building that evening around 8, but he had no clear memory of the man she was meeting. This was unusual for Patterson, who prided himself on recognizing residents and their guests. The elevator security footage would show Melissa entering alone, pressing the button for the 12th floor. Then the footage cut out due to what the building management claimed was a technical malfunction. This malfunction was not accidental. Vincent Crawford had remotely disabled the cameras using skills he had developed during his years working in IT. Melissa knocked on the door of apartment 12B at exactly 8 in the evening. Derek opened the door with a warm smile, wearing a casual button-down shirt and jeans. "Come in," he said, stepping aside to let her enter. The apartment was tastefully decorated with modern furniture, soft lighting, and the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. Classical music played softly from a speaker in the living room. It all seemed perfect, romantic, thoughtful. Everything a woman could hope for on a third date with a promising new partner. Derek offered Melissa a glass of wine, which she accepted. He had already poured himself a glass, and they toasted to getting to know each other better. Melissa took a sip of the wine, a nice red that tasted slightly bitter, but not unpleasantly so. She attributed the bitter note to the wine varietal, not knowing that Derek had dissolved rohypnol, a powerful sedative commonly known as a date rape drug, into her glass. They talked for about 30 minutes, Derek asking Melissa about her day at the hospital while he finished preparing dinner in the kitchen. Melissa began to feel strange. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Her thoughts became fuzzy around the edges. She tried to stand up from the couch where she had been sitting, but her legs felt weak and unsteady. "Are you okay?" Derek asked, his voice coming from far away despite him standing right next to her. Melissa tried to respond, but her words came out slurred and incomprehensible. She felt Derek's hands supporting her, guiding her back to sit down. "Just relax," he said softly. "You're probably just tired from your long shift." Melissa wanted to argue, wanted to say this felt like more than just tiredness, but she couldn't form the words. The last thing she saw before losing consciousness completely was Derek's face, no longer warm and charming, but cold and calculating. The mask had finally dropped, revealing the monster beneath. When Melissa's eyes closed, Vincent Crawford checked his watch. 8:47 in the evening, right on schedule. He had maybe 2 hours before Katie Morrison would start calling, wondering why her friend hadn't checked in at 9 as promised. That gave him plenty of time to complete his plan. He picked up Melissa's phone from where she had left it on the coffee table and powered it off. Then he went to work, moving with practiced efficiency through the steps he had executed 5 times before. At 9 in the evening, Katie Morrison checked her phone during a break in her evening shift at Denver Children's Hospital. No message from Melissa. She texted her friend, "Everything okay? Just checking in." The message showed as delivered but not read. Katie waited 30 minutes, trying not to worry. Maybe Melissa was just caught up in a romantic moment and forgot to check her phone. Maybe she and Derek were having such a good time that 9 o'clock came and went without notice. But at 9:30, when there was still no response, Katie's anxiety increased. She called Melissa's phone. It went straight to voicemail. Katie left a message trying to sound casual rather than panicked. "Hey, it's me. Just wanted to make sure you're having a good time. Call me when you get this." By 10 in the evening, Katie's concern had transformed into genuine fear. She called again, straight to voicemail. She sent multiple texts. None of them showed as read, indicating Melissa's phone was powered off. This was completely unlike her friend. Melissa was responsible and thoughtful. She wouldn't just ignore check-in messages after promising to stay in contact. Katie's mind raced through possibilities. Maybe Melissa's phone died. Maybe she was in an area with no service. Maybe she was so involved in her date that she genuinely lost track of time. Or maybe something terrible had happened. At 11 that night, Katie made the decision to call Melissa's parents. She hated to worry Robert and Linda Chen, but something felt desperately wrong. Robert answered the phone, his voice groggy with sleep. "Katie, is everything all right?" "It's the middle of the night." Katie explained the situation as calmly as she could. Melissa had a date tonight at a man's apartment. She promised to check in at 9 but never did. "Her phone is off." "I'm really worried." Robert's voice became instantly alert. "What man? Where?" Katie provided all the information she had. Derek Hoffman, the address on Cherry Creek Drive, the details Melissa had shared about meeting him on Tinder 3 days earlier. Robert and Linda Chen were both wide awake now, sharing Katie's fear that something bad had happened to their daughter. At midnight on March 21st, Robert Chen called the Denver Police Department to report his daughter missing. The officer who took the call was initially dismissive. Adults are allowed to turn off their phones and not check in with their parents. The officer said, "Is there any indication that your daughter is in danger or that a crime has been committed?" Robert tried to explain that this behavior was completely out of character for Melissa, but the officer remained skeptical. In missing persons cases, police are often hesitant to act immediately for adults who have only been out of contact for a few hours. People have the right to their privacy, and many missing person reports turn out to be misunderstandings or adults choosing to disconnect temporarily. But Robert Chen was persistent. "My daughter is a responsible adult who promised to check in with her friend. She would never break that promise without a reason. Something is wrong. I know it. Please send someone to check the address where she went." Finally, the officer agreed to send a patrol car to conduct a wellness check at 1523 Cherry Creek Drive. 2 officers arrived at the building at 1 in the morning on March 21st. They spoke to the doorman, James Patterson, who confirmed that a young woman matching Melissa Chen's description had entered the building around 8 the previous evening. The officers went up to apartment 12B and knocked on the door. No answer. They knocked harder, announcing themselves as police. Still no response. The building manager was called to unlock the apartment. When the door opened, the officers found the unit completely empty. Not just empty of people, but empty of furniture, personal belongings, any sign that someone lived there. The apartment appeared recently cleaned, with the chemical smell of disinfectant in the air. There was no food in the kitchen, no dishes in the sink, no indication that dinner had been prepared. It was as if no one had been there at all. The officers checked with building management, who confirmed that apartment 12B was a corporate rental unit. It had been vacant for the past 3 weeks, with no scheduled rentals. Someone had accessed the apartment without authorization, though the building's digital key system showed no record of entry. This was sophisticated. Whoever had lured Melissa Chen to this location had the technical skills to hack into building security systems and leave virtually no trace of their presence. The officers returned to their patrol car and called in their findings. A young woman had entered the building and never come out, at least not through the front entrance. The basement parking garage had multiple exits, and security footage was being reviewed. Melissa Chen's car, a 2015 Honda Civic with Colorado license plate CDH4892, was found in the visitor parking lot. The car was locked, with Melissa's purse still inside on the passenger seat. Inside the purse, officers found her wallet, identification, credit cards, and $40 in cash. What they didn't find was her phone. This discovery elevated the case from a possible voluntary disappearance to a likely crime. A woman doesn't leave her purse and wallet behind voluntarily. A woman doesn't abandon her car and disappear without taking her belongings. Something bad had happened in apartment 12B, even if there was no visible evidence of violence. By 2 in the morning, the case was assigned to Detective Sarah Ramirez of the Denver Police Department's Missing Persons Unit. Detective Ramirez was a 15-year veteran of the force, known for her tenacity and her ability to spot details others missed. When she arrived at the apartment building and reviewed the initial findings, her instincts immediately told her this was more than a simple missing person case. This was an abduction, carefully planned and expertly executed. Detective Ramirez began by interviewing the doorman, James Patterson. She showed him a clear photo of Melissa Chen that Robert Chen had provided. "Yes, that's definitely the woman who came in around 8, Patterson confirmed. "She asked for Derek Hoffman in 12B. I directed her to the elevators." "Did you see Derek Hoffman? What did he look like?" Patterson struggled to remember. "That's the strange thing. I see a lot of people come and go in this building, and I usually remember the residents pretty well. But I can't picture the man she was meeting. I don't think I ever actually saw him." Ramirez made a note of this. Either Derek Hoffman had entered the building through a different entrance, or he was skilled at avoiding notice. She reviewed the building's security footage personally, noting that cameras covered the lobby, the parking garage, and the hallways, but the elevator cameras had mysteriously malfunctioned between 7 and 11 that evening. The footage showed Melissa entering the lobby at 7:50 in the evening, walking to the elevators and pressing the button. Then nothing. No footage of her on the 12th floor. No footage of her exiting the building. And no footage of any man matching a description of Derek Hoffman. It was as if Melissa had been swallowed by the building itself, disappearing into a technological blind spot. Detective Ramirez knew this was not a coincidence. Someone with advanced technical knowledge had disabled those cameras at precisely the right time to hide their actions. This suggested premeditation and sophistication far beyond typical crimes of opportunity. By the time morning broke on March 21st, Detective Ramirez had assembled a team to begin a comprehensive investigation. The first priority was accessing Melissa's phone records and digital footprint. Through her carrier, investigators were able to remotely track the last known location of Melissa's phone. The phone had been at 1523 Cherry Creek Drive until 8:47 in the evening, when it was powered off. The phone had not been turned back on since, and its current location was unknown. Ramirez obtained a warrant to access Melissa's Tinder account and found the conversation history with Derek Hoffman. The messages confirmed Katie Morrison's account of the rapid development of the relationship. Hundreds of messages exchanged over 3 days, increasingly personal and intimate. Derek Hoffman's profile was carefully examined. The photos were professional quality, showing an attractive man in his mid-30s with a golden retriever in various outdoor settings. The bio claimed he was a software engineer recently relocated from Seattle. But when investigators ran reverse image searches on the profile photos, they discovered something disturbing. The photos belonged to Michael Torres, a real software engineer living in Austin, Texas. Torres was contacted by Denver police and confirmed that he had never used Tinder and had no idea his photos had been stolen and used to create a fake profile. Someone had taken his pictures from his LinkedIn profile and Facebook page, neither of which had privacy settings enabled. Torres was shocked and horrified that his image had been used to commit what appeared to be a serious crime. With the real identity of Derek Hoffman unknown, Detective Ramirez focused on the phone number associated with the Tinder account. The number was traced to a burner phone, a prepaid cell phone purchased with cash at a 7-Eleven convenience store located at 945 Broadway in Denver. Security footage from the 7-Eleven was reviewed, but the footage quality was poor, and the buyer had worn a baseball cap and kept his face down, making identification impossible. The phone had been purchased on March 10, 2023, just 5 days before Derek Hoffman's Tinder profile had matched with Melissa Chen. This timing suggested that the profile had been created specifically to target Melissa, or women like her. The burner phone had only ever contacted one number, Melissa's cell phone. This level of operational security indicated someone with experience in avoiding detection. By midday on March 21st, Melissa Chen's disappearance was being treated as a critical missing person case with suspected foul play. Her photo was circulated to all hospitals, morgues, and law enforcement agencies in Colorado and neighboring states. An Amber Alert was considered but did not meet the criteria since Melissa was an adult and there was no confirmed abduction by a known suspect. Still, the media was alerted and local news stations began running stories about the missing nurse. Katie Morrison was interviewed by police and media, providing details about Melissa's character and the events leading up to her disappearance. "She's the most responsible person I know," Katie said tearfully to a local news reporter. "She would never just vanish without telling someone. Whoever this Derek person is, he did something to her. I know it." Robert and Linda Chen made emotional pleas on television, begging anyone with information about their daughter to come forward. They released home videos of Melissa from childhood, images of her graduating from nursing school, photos of her with her golden retriever Bailey. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Hundreds of people volunteered to help search for Melissa. Flyers with her photo were posted throughout Denver. Social media campaigns using the hashtag #FindMelissaChen began trending locally. Denver Children's Hospital released a statement expressing their hope for Melissa's safe return and describing her as a valued member of their team who would be greatly missed. But as the hours turned into days, hope for finding Melissa alive began to fade. Detective Ramirez knew from experience that the first 48 hours were critical in missing person cases. After that, the statistics became grimmer, and they had no leads, no suspects, and no idea where Melissa had been taken or what had happened to her after she entered that elevator at 1523 Cherry Creek Drive. On March 22nd, search teams were organized to canvass areas around Denver where a body might be concealed. Red Rocks Park, where Melissa and Derek had hiked on their second date, was searched extensively. K-9 units trained to detect human remains were deployed. The trails were walked by dozens of volunteers calling Melissa's name, hoping against hope that she might be injured somewhere, unable to call for help but still alive. Cherry Creek Trail was searched. City parks were searched. Vacant lots and construction sites were checked, but there was no sign of Melissa Chen. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist the moment she stepped into that elevator. The case was featured on local news every night, with updates on the investigation and renewed appeals for information. Crime experts were brought on television to discuss the dangers of online dating and the sophisticated methods predators use to target victims. Tinder released a statement expressing sympathy for Melissa's family and pledging cooperation with law enforcement. The company emphasized that they had safety features in place and encouraged users to meet in public places and tell friends their plans. But critics pointed out that these safety measures had not prevented what happened to Melissa Chen. On the morning of March 23, 2023, everything changed. Amanda Russell, a 41-year-old accountant, had a morning routine that she followed religiously. Every day before work, she would go for a 5-mile run on the trails around Chatfield Reservoir, a large body of water located about 30 minutes south of Denver in Littleton, Colorado. The reservoir was surrounded by beautiful natural areas with well-maintained trails perfect for running, hiking, and enjoying nature. Amanda had been running these trails for years and knew them well. On this particular morning, she was running along a less popular trail near the water's edge when something caught her eye. A pile of fabric partially hidden in the brush near the trail. As she got closer, Amanda realized with growing horror what she was looking at. Medical scrubs, navy blue in color, crumpled and discarded among the rocks and vegetation. But what made her blood run cold was the dark staining on the fabric. Blood. Lots of blood. Amanda pulled out her cell phone with shaking hands and dialed 911 at 6:45 in the morning. The dispatcher answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? I'm at Chatfield Reservoir, Amanda said, her voice trembling. I found bloody clothes on the trail. Medical scrubs. I think something really bad happened here. The dispatcher kept Amanda on the line, asking for her exact location and advising her not to touch anything. Amanda gave the address of the nearest road access point, 15241 Waterton Canyon Road in Littleton. Within minutes, Littleton police were dispatched to the scene, and Detective Sarah Ramirez was immediately notified. Ramirez arrived at Chatfield Reservoir at 7:30 in the morning, her stomach already tight with dread. The location was isolated, exactly the kind of place someone would choose to dispose of evidence or a body. Crime scene technicians were already setting up a perimeter around the area where Amanda Russell had found the scrubs. Ramirez approached carefully, not wanting to contaminate the scene. The scrubs were laid out on a tarp for examination. They were navy blue, a common color for medical professionals. There was a hospital logo on the pocket, Denver Children's Hospital. And there, on a white name tag still pinned to the shirt, were words that confirmed Ramirez's worst fears. Melissa Chen, RN. The scrubs were soaked in blood, far more blood than would come from a minor injury. The fabric was torn in several places, suggesting a violent struggle. Ramirez felt a wave of nausea and grief wash over her. She had been hoping against hope that Melissa Chen would be found alive, that somehow this would turn out to be a misunderstanding. But these scrubs told a different story. They told a story of violence and murder. The area around where the scrubs were found was immediately searched by multiple teams. K9 cadaver dogs were brought in to search for a body. The reservoir waters near the location were searched by divers. Helicopters with thermal imaging cameras flew over the surrounding area, but no body was found. Just the scrubs, discarded like trash, left for someone to find. Crime scene technicians collected the scrubs carefully, preserving every possible piece of evidence. Blood spatter analysis indicated that the blood had been fresh when the scrubs were discarded, meaning Melissa had likely been killed very recently, possibly the same night she disappeared. DNA testing was expedited, with results expected within a few days. Detective Ramirez knew the DNA would confirm what she already knew, that the blood belonged to Melissa Chen. But she was also hoping for something else. If there had been a struggle, there might be DNA from the perpetrator as well. A single strand of hair, a flake of skin under Melissa's fingernails, a drop of blood from an injury sustained during the fight. Any biological material left by the killer could potentially be the key to identifying and catching him. At 9 in the morning on March 23rd, Detective Ramirez had the devastating task of visiting the Chen family home in Boulder to inform them of the discovery. Robert and Linda Chen had spent the past 3 days in a state of suspended horror, hoping for good news, but preparing themselves for the worst. When they opened the door and saw Detective Ramirez's expression, they knew immediately that the news was not good. "Can I come in?" Ramirez asked gently. The Chens led her into their living room, the same living room where Melissa had grown up, where family photos covered the walls and showed a happy, smiling girl growing into a beautiful young woman. Ramirez sat down across from them and delivered the news as compassionately as she could. "We found Melissa's scrubs this morning at Chatfield Reservoir. The scrubs had significant blood on them. We're still searching the area, but I need to prepare you for the likelihood that Melissa may not be coming home." Linda Chen's scream of anguish was something Ramirez would never forget. Robert Chen sat in stunned silence, his face going pale as the words sank in. Both parents began crying, clinging to each other as their worst nightmare became reality. Ramirez stayed with them for an hour, answering their questions as best she could and connecting them with victim services support. She also called Katie Morrison to come be with the family during this horrific time. When Katie arrived and was told about the scrubs, she collapsed on the floor, sobbing. She immediately recognized the specific coffee stain on the pocket of Melissa's scrub top, a stain from 3 days ago when Melissa had accidentally spilled her morning coffee before their shift. That small detail, that coffee stain, confirmed beyond any doubt that these were the scrubs Melissa had been wearing at work on March 20th, her last shift before meeting Derek Hoffman. The news broke to the media quickly. By noon, every local news station was running the story. Missing nurses, bloody scrubs found at Chatfield Reservoir. The story was picked up by national media outlets within hours. Cable news channels ran segments about the case, bringing on experts to discuss online dating safety and the psychology of predators who use dating apps to find victims. Tinder's stock price dropped as parents and partners expressed concern about the safety of the platform. The hashtag #FindMelissaChen evolved into Justice for Melissa Chen. True crime communities on Reddit and TikTok began their own investigations, analyzing Melissa's Tinder profile, trying to find clues about who Derek Hoffman really was, and discussing similar cases of women who had disappeared after meeting someone from a dating app. The search around Chatfield Reservoir intensified over the next 2 days. The area within a 15-mile radius was systematically searched. Divers spent hours in the cold water, looking for a body weighed down at the bottom of the reservoir. Helicopters with thermal imaging cameras surveyed the area from above. Hundreds of volunteers walked the trails, looking in the brush and the woods for any sign of Melissa, but no body was found. It was as if the killer had made Melissa's body disappear completely, leaving only her scrubs behind as evidence that she had been murdered. This suggested the killer was organized, experienced, and knowledgeable about how to avoid detection. He had disposed of the body in a location that would not be easily found, while leaving the scrubs in a more accessible location to taunt law enforcement. This behavior pattern was consistent with serial offenders who enjoyed the psychological game of cat and mouse with police. By March 25th, the FBI officially joined the investigation. Federal resources were brought to bear on the case, including behavioral analysts, forensic experts, and investigators with experience in hunting serial predators. The involvement of the FBI indicated that authorities believed this was not an isolated incident, but potentially part of a larger pattern of crimes. Detective Ramirez met with FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb, who had been assigned as the lead federal investigator on the case. Webb was in his mid-40s, with 15 years of experience tracking down violent criminals. He reviewed all the evidence collected so far and came to the same conclusion Ramirez had already reached. Whoever did this has done it before. Agent Webb explained his reasoning: the level of planning, the use of a fake profile with stolen photos, the burner phone purchased with cash, hacking into building security systems, the careful disposal of evidence. All of this requires experience and sophistication. First-time killers don't operate with this level of precision. This is someone who has refined his methods over multiple victims. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit was consulted to develop a psychological profile of the unknown subject. Based on the evidence and the methods used, they described the perpetrator as a white male between the ages of 30 and 45, likely living alone, with above-average intelligence and strong technical skills in computers and digital systems. He would be socially skilled enough to appear normal and charming in person, able to quickly build rapport with potential victims. He would have a history of controlling and manipulative behavior in relationships. He would likely have a collection of trophies from previous victims, items he kept to relive the experience of his crimes. And most importantly, he had probably killed before and would kill again if not stopped. With this profile in mind, the FBI began cross-referencing missing person cases across Colorado and neighboring states. They were looking for women who fit a similar pattern to Melissa Chen. professional women in their late 20s to mid-30s who had disappeared after meeting someone through an online dating platform. What they found was deeply disturbing. 5 other women in the region had disappeared under similar circumstances over the past 4 years. Jessica Turner, 31, a marketing manager from Fort Collins, Colorado, had disappeared in June of 2019. She had told her roommate she was meeting someone she had connected with on Bumble. She was last seen getting into her car to drive to a first date. Her car was found abandoned 2 days later in a parking lot. She was never seen again. The only evidence ever found was her jacket, discovered near Horsetooth Reservoir 3 weeks after her disappearance. Brittany Walsh, 28, a paralegal from Colorado Springs, disappeared in November of 2020. She had matched with someone on Tinder and told her sister she was going to meet him for dinner. She never came home. Her phone was found in a dumpster, but Brittany was never located. Lauren Kim, 33, an accountant from Cheyenne, Wyoming, disappeared in March of 2021. She had been excited about a new relationship with a man she met on Hinge. After their 3rd date, she vanished. No body, no evidence, just a woman who ceased to exist. Rachel Mendez, 29, a social worker from Salt Lake City, Utah, disappeared in August of 2022. She had told colleagues about a promising new man she was dating, someone she had met online. She went to his apartment for dinner and was never seen again. Police investigated but found no trace of Rachel or the man she had been meeting. Vanessa Brooks, 27, a graphic designer from Boulder, Colorado, disappeared in January of 2023, just 2 months before Melissa Chen. She had been using multiple dating apps and had mentioned to friends that she was seeing someone new. She went missing after agreeing to meet this man at his apartment. Her family reported her missing, but the investigation had gone nowhere. No body, no suspect, no leads. When the FBI compiled these cases and compared them to Melissa Chen's disappearance, the pattern was unmistakable. 6 women, all professional, all in their late 20s to mid-30s, all disappearing after meeting someone through a dating app, all between the 2nd and 4th date, typically after agreeing to meet at the man's apartment. In 4 of the 6 cases, the men they were meeting had used fake names and stolen profile photos. In all 6 cases, the women's phones had been turned off shortly after their last known location, and in none of the cases had bodies been recovered, with the exception of Melissa's scrubs and Jessica's jacket. This was not coincidence. This was a serial killer working across state lines, using dating apps as hunting grounds for victims, and successfully evading capture for 4 years. The FBI designated the case as a serial homicide investigation and assigned additional resources. A task force was formed, including investigators from Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, since victims had been taken from all 3 states. The goal was to pool information and find connections between the cases that might lead to identifying the killer. Detective Ramirez worked closely with this task force, knowing that solving Melissa Chen's murder was now tied to solving 5 other murders as well. Digital forensics teams began analyzing the Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge accounts used in each case. They found that the accounts had been created using different email addresses, all of which were fake and untraceable. The IP addresses used to create the accounts were traced to public Wi-Fi locations, coffee shops, libraries, and other places where anyone could access the internet without leaving a digital signature. One particularly interesting discovery was that the same 3 public Wi-Fi locations appeared in both the Melissa Chen case and the Vanessa Brooks case. A Starbucks at 2301 Blake Street in Denver, the Denver Public Library at 10 West 14th Avenue Parkway, and Union Station at 1701 Wincoop Street. This suggested the killer lived or worked in the Denver area, using these locations to create his fake dating profiles while hiding his true identity. The burner phone used to contact Melissa Chen was also analyzed in detail. Cell tower data showed that the phone had been in several significant locations in the days before Melissa's disappearance. Most disturbing was the data showing the phone had pinged cell towers near Denver Children's Hospital multiple times between March 15th and March 20th. This meant the killer had been surveilling Melissa at her workplace, watching her routines, learning her schedule, gathering information that would help him seem like the perfect match when they finally connected on Tinder. The final ping from the burner phone came from cell towers near Chatfield Reservoir on March 20th at 9:15 in the evening. This was about 30 minutes after Melissa's phone had been turned off at Derek Hoffman's apartment. The timeline was becoming clear. Derek Hoffman, whoever he really was, had drugged Melissa at his apartment around 8:47. He had then transported her unconscious body to Chatfield Reservoir, arriving around 9:15. Whatever happened to Melissa happened at that location, likely in a secluded area where no one would hear screams or witness violence. The killer had murdered Melissa, possibly strangled her based on the lack of obvious blood spatter evidence at the SCRUBS location, then disposed of her body in a location that searchers could not find. He had removed her scrubs and left them near the water, knowing they would eventually be discovered. This was a message to police, a taunt that said, "I killed her, and you can't stop me." On March 28, 2023, 8 days after Melissa Chen disappeared, the DNA test results came back from the lab. As expected, the blood on the scrubs belonged to Melissa Chen. But there was a second DNA profile found on the scrubs as well, male DNA extracted from skin cells, and a small amount of blood that suggested the killer had been scratched or injured during a struggle with Melissa. This second DNA profile was immediately run through CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system, a database containing millions of DNA profiles from convicted criminals and arrested individuals. The search came back with no matches. Whoever killed Melissa Chen had no prior criminal record, at least not one that had resulted in his DNA being collected and entered into the system. This was both disappointing and revealing. It suggested the killer was intelligent enough to have avoided arrest in the past, despite potentially committing multiple murders. However, the DNA profile was now in the system, ready to be compared against any future samples that might be collected. If the killer was ever arrested for any reason and had his DNA taken, the system would flag him as a match to the Melissa Chen case. This was often how serial criminals were finally caught, not through brilliant detective work, but through a seemingly unrelated arrest that finally put their DNA in the database. Detective Ramirez was frustrated by the lack of progress. They knew Melissa had been murdered. They knew the killer was likely responsible for 5 other murders. They had DNA from the killer, but they had no idea who he was, where he lived, or how to find him before he killed again. The investigation seemed to be at a standstill until April 2nd, 2023, when an unexpected break came from an unlikely source. An anonymous tip was called into the Denver police tip line at 3 in the afternoon. The caller was male, older, speaking with a Spanish accent. He seemed nervous and reluctant, but he had information about the Melissa Chen case. The tip line operator encouraged him to share what he knew, assuring him that he could remain anonymous if he preferred. The caller identified himself only as someone who had been at Chatfield Reservoir on the night of March 20th. He explained that he was a fisherman, that he often went to the reservoir late at night because that was when the fishing was best. On the night in question, he had been fishing from the shore near where Melissa's scrubs would later be found. He hadn't thought much about it at the time, but he had seen a white pickup truck parked in an isolated area near the water around 9 or 9:30 at night. He had seen a man get out of the truck carrying what looked like a large duffel bag. The man had walked toward the water, and the fisherman had assumed he was just another person enjoying the reservoir at night. The caller said he hadn't reported this at the time because he didn't want to get involved. and he hadn't realized it was connected to anything criminal. But after seeing the news coverage about Melissa Chen and the discovery of her scrubs in the exact location where he had seen the man with the duffel bag, he felt guilty and knew he needed to come forward. The tip line operator took down all the details and immediately forwarded the information to Detective Ramirez. Ramirez called the number the tipster had provided, and after some gentle persuasion, convinced him to come to the police station to provide a formal statement. The man was Gregory Santos, a 63-year-old retired contractor who lived in Littleton. Santos came to the police station that evening and provided a detailed account of what he had seen on March 20th. He described the white pickup truck as a newer model, possibly a Ford F-150. He hadn't gotten a clear look at the license plate because it was dark and he had been focused on fishing, but he thought he had seen partial letters or numbers, something starting with JKL. He described the man as being around 6 feet to 6 feet 2 inches tall, athletic build, wearing dark clothing. Santos admitted he hadn't seen the man's face clearly because of the darkness and distance, but he had noticed the man walked with a slight limp, favoring his left leg. There might have also been a tattoo visible on the man's right forearm when he reached into the truck, though Santos couldn't be certain about this detail. This was the most significant lead the investigation had received. A witness who had actually seen the killer at the location where Melissa was likely murdered, with a description of the vehicle and a physical description of the suspect. Detective Ramirez knew that witness memories could be unreliable, especially when recalling events that had occurred nearly 2 weeks earlier. But Santos seemed credible and genuinely disturbed by what he had witnessed. Ramirez arranged for Santos to undergo forensic hypnosis, a controversial but sometimes effective technique for helping witnesses recall additional details that their conscious mind might not be able to access. The session was conducted by a trained forensic hypnotist on April 4th. Under hypnosis, Santos was guided back to the night of March 20th, asked to remember everything he saw, heard, and felt. The results were remarkable. Santos recalled additional details he hadn't consciously remembered. He heard the man talking on a cell phone, though he couldn't make out most of the conversation. But one phrase stood out clearly in his hypnosis-enhanced memory. "It's done." Same as before. Those 4 words were chilling. Same as before implied this was not the first time the killer had brought a victim to this location. It confirmed the FBI's theory that they were dealing with a serial murderer who had refined his methods over multiple killings. Santos also recalled more details about the man's physical appearance. The slight limp he had noticed was more pronounced than he initially remembered. The man appeared to be moving carefully, as if in pain or trying to avoid putting weight on his left leg. The tattoo on the right forearm was clearer in his memory now, though he still couldn't make out the specific design. It was dark in color, possibly black or dark blue, and covered a significant portion of the forearm from wrist to elbow. With this enhanced description, police sketch artists worked with Santos to create a composite image of the suspect. The sketch showed a man with average features, nothing particularly distinctive about his face. But the combination of height, build, limp, and forearm tattoo gave investigators something concrete to work with. The next step was finding the white Ford F-150 truck. The partial license plate information, JKL, was run through Colorado DMV records. The results showed 2,847 registered vehicles in Colorado that matched the criteria of being white Ford F-150 pickup trucks with license plates beginning with JKL. This was a massive number to sort through, but it was better than having no leads at all. A team of investigators began the tedious process of cross-referencing these vehicle registrations with other information from the case. They eliminated trucks registered to women, since the witness had clearly identified the suspect as male. They eliminated trucks registered to individuals over the age of 60 or under the age of 25. since the behavioral profile suggested the killer was between 30 and 45. They looked for any registrations that showed connections to the locations where victims had disappeared: Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, Cheyenne, Salt Lake City, Boulder, and Denver. Slowly, the list was narrowed down. Meanwhile, traffic camera footage from March 20th was being systematically reviewed. Cameras along the route from Cherry Creek Drive to Chatfield Reservoir were examined, looking for white Ford F-150 trucks traveling during the critical time period between 8:30 and 10 in the evening. This was painstaking work, requiring investigators to watch hours of footage, noting every white truck that appeared and trying to capture license plate numbers. On April 5th, a breakthrough came. Traffic camera footage from Highway C-470, the major route between Denver and Chatfield Reservoir, showed a white Ford F-150 traveling southbound at 8:35 in the evening on March 20th. The angle of the camera and the quality of the footage allowed investigators to clearly read the license plate: JKL 7294. The license plate was immediately run through registration records. The vehicle was registered to Vincent Crawford, a 36-year-old man living at 8734 West Alameda Avenue in Lakewood, Colorado. Detective Ramirez felt her heart race as she looked at the registration information. Vincent Crawford. She had never heard the name before, but everything about him fit the profile of the man they were hunting. Age 36, fitting the age range. Registered address in the Denver metro area, consistent with the killer's known pattern of activity. And most importantly, he owned a white Ford F-150 pickup truck with the exact license plate that had been spotted heading toward Chatfield Reservoir the night Melissa Chen was murdered. A background check on Vincent Crawford was immediately conducted. What they found was both revealing and frustrating. Vincent Crawford had no criminal record. He had never been arrested, never been charged with a crime, never had any contact with law enforcement. He had been born on January 15, 1987, in Seattle, Washington. He had moved to the Denver area in 2015. Employment records showed he worked as an independent IT consultant, taking contract work for various companies. His tax returns showed modest but steady income over the past 8 years. He had been married in 2015 to a woman named Monica Crawford. The marriage had ended in divorce in 2018. Court records showed the divorce had been sealed by a judge's order, which was unusual and suggested there might have been sensitive issues involved. Monica Crawford, now Monica Taylor after remarrying, was living in Phoenix, Arizona. Detective Ramirez immediately made arrangements to fly to Phoenix to interview Vincent's ex-wife. If anyone could provide insight into Vincent Crawford's true nature, it would be the woman who had been married to him. On April 6th, Ramirez and Agent Webb arrived in Phoenix and met with Monica Taylor at her home. Monica was 34 years old, an elementary school teacher, married to her second husband for 3 years. When Ramirez explained that Vincent was a suspect in multiple murders, Monica's face went pale. "I knew something was wrong with him," Monica said, her hands shaking. "I knew it when I left him, but I didn't know it was this." Over the next 2 hours, Monica told her story. She had met Vincent in 2014 through mutual friends. He had seemed charming and successful, working in IT and making good money. They had married quickly, after dating for only 6 months. But the marriage quickly revealed Vincent's dark side. He was controlling, monitoring Monica's phone calls and text messages, demanding to know where she was at all times. He became jealous if she spoke to other men, even in innocent professional contexts. He would fly into rages over minor things, though he never physically hit her. The emotional abuse was constant. But what truly terrified Monica was Vincent's obsession with true crime and violence. He spent hours every night reading about serial killers, watching documentaries about murders and researching unsolved cases. At first, Monica thought it was just a morbid curiosity that many people have. But Vincent's interest went beyond normal. He would talk about how killers made mistakes, how they got caught, how he would do things differently if he were in their position. In 2017, Monica discovered something that made her fear for her own safety. She was using Vincent's computer to check her email when she accidentally saw his browsing history. Vincent had been searching for things like how to dispose of a body, wilderness burial sites that are never found, how police investigate disappearances, and how to avoid leaving DNA evidence. When Monica confronted him about these searches, Vincent became furious. He said it was research for a novel he was planning to write, a thriller about a serial killer. But Monica didn't believe him. There was something in his eyes when he talked about it, an excitement that seemed too real. The marriage deteriorated rapidly after that. Monica was afraid to leave Vincent directly, fearing how he might react. She confided in her parents, who helped her plan an exit strategy. With their support, she filed for divorce and temporarily moved in with them in a different state for her own safety. Vincent contested the divorce initially, but Monica's attorney was aggressive. They threatened to subpoena Vincent's computer and his search history as evidence of threatening behavior. Vincent's attorney negotiated a deal. Vincent would agree to a sealed divorce with no public record of the proceedings, and Monica would drop any possibility of seeking a protective order or pressing charges. Monica agreed, just wanting to be free of the marriage. But she lived in fear for years afterward, worried that Vincent would track her down. She had changed her last name after remarrying, partly to make it harder for Vincent to find her. When Detective Ramirez asked if Monica would be willing to testify about Vincent's behavior and his disturbing online searches, Monica broke down crying. "If he really killed all those women," she said, "I could have stopped him. I knew something was wrong in 2017. If I had gone to the police then, maybe he wouldn't have." She couldn't finish the sentence. Ramirez assured Monica that none of this was her fault, that Vincent alone was responsible for his actions. But the guilt Monica felt was palpable. With Monica's testimony, plus the vehicle evidence, plus the witness description, plus the pattern of behavior that fit the profile, Detective Ramirez and Agent Webb felt they finally had enough to get search warrants for Vincent Crawford's home and vehicle. On April 8th, they presented their evidence to a judge. The judge reviewed the compiled information, the witness statement from Gregory Santos, the traffic camera footage showing Vincent's truck heading toward Chatfield Reservoir, Monica's testimony about Vincent's disturbing behavior and online searches, and the connection to multiple missing women cases. The judge approved comprehensive search warrants for Vincent Crawford's residence, his vehicle, and authorization to collect a DNA sample. The warrants were to be executed immediately. The arrest of Vincent Crawford was carefully planned for the morning of April 10th, 2023. A SWAT team was assembled to serve the warrants, knowing that they were potentially dealing with a violent serial killer who might resist arrest or attempt to harm himself. The team surrounded Vincent's house at 8734 West Alameda Avenue in Lakewood at 6 in the morning, a time chosen to catch the suspect off guard and minimize the risk of confrontation. Detective Ramirez led the operation, wearing a bulletproof vest and accompanied by heavily armed officers. The quiet residential street suddenly erupted with police presence, marked vehicles blocking both ends of the block, unmarked cars in driveways, officers positioned at every possible exit from the house. The SWAT team leader knocked forcefully on the front door and announced their presence. "Police, search warrant. Vincent Crawford, you need to come to the door with your hands visible." There was a moment of silence, then the sound of movement inside the house. The door opened slowly, and Vincent Crawford appeared wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt, his hair messy from sleep. He looked at the assembled officers without apparent surprise or fear. His first words were calm and measured. "I want my lawyer." Vincent Crawford was handcuffed and taken into custody without incident. He showed no emotion, no resistance, no acknowledgement of why police might be at his door. He was placed in a police vehicle and transported to the Denver Police Headquarters, while forensic teams descended on his house to execute the search warrant. What they found inside Vincent Crawford's home would shock even the experienced investigators who had seen countless crime scenes. The house was a small ranch-style home, neat and well-maintained on the outside, giving no indication of the horrors it contained. But inside was evidence of years of planning, stalking, and murder. In the master bedroom, investigators found what could only be described as a trophy wall. One entire wall was covered with printed photographs of women, dozens of them. Some of the faces were familiar from the missing persons cases: Melissa Chen, Vanessa Brooks, Rachel Mendez, Lauren Kim, Brittany Walsh, Jessica Turner. But there were at least 30 other women in the photographs as well. Women whose faces hadn't been reported missing. Women who might still be alive or who might be undiscovered victims. Many of the photos appeared to be screenshots from dating apps, showing women in profile pictures that they had uploaded to Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and other platforms. Some of the photos had been crossed out with red marker, a chilling indication of which women Vincent had targeted and presumably killed. Beneath the photos was a filing cabinet. Inside were manila folders, each labeled with a woman's name. Each folder contained detailed notes about the woman, her work address, her home address, her daily schedule, her habits and routines. Vincent had been stalking these women for weeks before making contact, learning everything about them, looking for vulnerabilities he could exploit. The level of research was astounding and terrifying. Vincent had notes about which women lived alone, which had strained relationships with family, which were going through difficult times emotionally. He had documented the best times to approach them, the best ways to manipulate them, the best locations to take them. It was a hunter's journal, documenting prey. In Melissa Chen's folder, there were notes showing Vincent had been watching her for 3 weeks before creating the Derek Hoffman Tinder profile. He had learned her work schedule at Denver Children's Hospital, down to the exact times of her shifts. He knew she took Bailey for walks every morning at 7. He knew she went grocery shopping on Tuesday evenings. He knew she was lonely and recently single. He had crafted the Derek Hoffman persona specifically to appeal to what he knew about Melissa's desires and vulnerabilities. The notes showed Vincent's methodology in chilling detail. Create false profile using stolen photos of attractive, professional man. Match with target on dating app. Establish quick rapport through shared interests. Move to intense personal connection within days. Suggest meeting at controlled location by 3rd or 4th date. Drug victim. Transport to predetermined disposal site. Execute. Dispose of body. Keep trophies. The clinical, businesslike tone of the notes was disturbing. Vincent treated murder like a project management task, with steps to follow and goals to achieve. But the most damning evidence was found in Vincent's garage. There was a large chest freezer, locked with a heavy padlock. Investigators used bolt cutters to open it, not knowing what they would find inside. The freezer did not contain bodies, but it contained something almost as significant: a collection of personal items that belonged to the missing women. Jewelry, driver's licenses, cell phones, items of clothing. Each item was stored in a labeled plastic bag with the woman's name and the date she was killed. From Melissa Chen's collection, investigators found her iPhone, her driver's license, a necklace she had been wearing the night she disappeared, and her nursing badge from Denver Children's Hospital. There were similar collections for Vanessa Brooks, Rachel Mendez, Lauren Kim, Brittany Walsh, and Jessica Turner. The driver's licenses confirmed the identities of all 6 victims. This was Vincent Crawford's trophy collection, items he kept to remember his victims and relive the experience of killing them. Serial killers often kept such trophies, a psychological need to maintain a connection to their crimes. Investigators also seized multiple laptops and external hard drives from Vincent's home office. Forensic analysis would later reveal thousands of photos stored on these devices. Surveillance photos of the 6 known victims, taken without their knowledge as Vincent stalked them. Screenshots of dating app profiles showing the fake identities Vincent had created. Google Maps screenshots of remote locations throughout Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, places where bodies could be disposed of without being found. Photos of Chatfield Reservoir, Horsetooth Reservoir, Flaming Gorge, and other reservoirs and wilderness areas. There was also evidence of 6 different Tinder accounts, each created with stolen photos of different men. Vincent had a library of photos stolen from LinkedIn and Facebook profiles, professional men who looked trustworthy and successful. He would select photos that matched the persona he wanted to create for each victim. For Melissa Chen, he had chosen Michael Torres, a software engineer whose photos conveyed stability and success. For other victims, he had chosen different looks, adjusting his approach based on what he thought each woman would find attractive. The final piece of evidence collected was Vincent Crawford's DNA. A simple cheek swab was taken, and the sample was sent to the lab for expedited processing. The results were expected within 48 hours, but everyone involved in the investigation already knew what those results would show. Vincent Crawford's DNA would match the male DNA found on Melissa Chen's bloody scrubs. The evidence against Vincent was overwhelming. Physical evidence, eyewitness testimony, digital evidence, and a confession written in his own detailed notes. But Vincent Crawford had invoked his right to remain silent and requested an attorney. He would not be making any verbal confession or cooperating with the investigation. His attorney was Thomas Brennan, a prominent defense attorney in Denver, known for taking high-profile criminal cases. Brennan was expensive and effective, specializing in defending clients accused of heinous crimes. He arrived at Denver Police Headquarters on the afternoon of April 10th and met privately with his client. When Brennan emerged from the meeting, he told investigators that Vincent would not be answering any questions and would be asserting his Fifth Amendment rights. However, Brennan added something unexpected. Against his advice, Vincent Crawford wanted to speak to investigators. He wanted to tell his story. On April 11th, 2023, at 2 in the afternoon, Vincent Crawford was brought to an interrogation room at Denver Police Headquarters. Present were Detective Sarah Ramirez, FBI agent Marcus Webb, and Thomas Brennan. Recording devices were activated, and Vincent Crawford's Miranda rights were read to him again. Vincent acknowledged that he understood his rights and that he was voluntarily waiving them to speak with investigators. Thomas Brennan looked uncomfortable, repeatedly advising his client that this was a mistake, that anything Vincent said could and would be used against him in court. But Vincent insisted. He wanted to talk. What followed was one of the most chilling confessions in Colorado law enforcement history. Vincent Crawford spoke for nearly 4 hours, describing in detail how he had selected, stalked, abducted, and murdered 6 women over a 4-year period. He showed no remorse, no emotion, speaking about his crimes as if he were describing a series of business transactions. "It's so easy," Vincent said early in the interview. "Women are desperate for connection. They want to believe that someone sees them, understands them, values them. All you have to do is present yourself as that person, and they fall into your hands." He described the creation of his fake dating profiles with pride, discussing how he carefully selected photos that would appeal to professional women, wrote bios that conveyed stability and emotional availability, and practiced his approach until it was perfect. He explained his targeting methodology, professional women between ages 25 and 35, living alone, recently out of a relationship, limited family connections or friends who might notice them missing immediately, emotionally vulnerable due to loneliness or life transitions, women who wanted to believe in love. Vincent admitted to surveilling Melissa Chen for weeks before making contact. "I watched her at the hospital," he said. "I learned her routine. I saw how she was with the children, gentle and caring. I knew she would trust me because that's who she was, someone who saw the best in people." He described their conversations on Tinder with disturbing accuracy, explaining how he tailored his responses to mirror Melissa's interests and values. When she mentioned true crime podcasts, he pretended to love them too. When she talked about her work, he asked thoughtful questions that made her feel seen. When she shared her pain about being single, he shared a made-up story of heartbreak that made him seem vulnerable and safe. He described their first date at Rioja restaurant. "She was so nervous," he said with what appeared to be amusement. "She wanted so badly for it to go well. I knew I had her from the first hour. She was already invested." The second date at Red Rocks Park was more of the same. Vincent continued, "I didn't bring a dog because Cooper doesn't exist. But she believed my excuse because she wanted to believe me. That's the key. People will believe what they want to believe if you give them a story that fits their desires." When asked about the third date, Vincent's tone became colder and more clinical. "I knew the third date had to be at a location I controlled. The apartment at 1523 Cherry Creek Drive was perfect. I had hacked into their corporate rental system weeks earlier and reserved the unit under a fake company name. I disabled the security cameras remotely so there would be no record of what happened inside." Vincent described drugging Melissa's wine with Rohypnol. "She trusted me completely," he said. "She drank the wine I gave her without hesitation. It took about 30 minutes for the drug to take full effect. She started to feel strange and tried to stand up, but her legs couldn't support her. That's when I knew I had her." When asked what happened next, Vincent showed the first signs of emotion, not remorse or guilt, but something that looked like satisfaction. "She woke up in the truck," he said. "I had already dressed her in scrubs from my collection. I wanted her to be found as a nurse. That's what she was. She started screaming when she woke up and realized what was happening." Detective Ramirez interrupted. "Why did you dress her in scrubs?" Vincent thought about this for a moment. "Identity," he said finally. "I wanted each woman to be remembered for what she was. The nurse, the accountant, the designer. That's how I thought of them. Not as individuals, but as categories." He described driving to Chatfield Reservoir with Melissa, regaining consciousness in the passenger seat, restrained but fighting against the effects of the drug and her restraints. "She fought hard," Vincent said, and there was something like respect in his voice. "She scratched my arm, drew blood. It took longer than I expected to kill her. She was strong." When asked directly how he killed Melissa, Vincent answered without hesitation. "Strangulation. Manual strangulation. It's more personal than other methods. You have to commit to it. It takes several minutes of sustained pressure. You have to watch the life leave their eyes." Melissa Chen fought until the very end. The room was silent except for the sound of the recording equipment. Detective Ramirez felt physically sick, but maintained her professional composure. And after she was dead, she asked, "I removed her scrubs and left them where they would be found. Then I took her body to a location I had scouted months earlier, a place where she would never be found." When Agent Webb asked Vincent to reveal the location of Melissa's body, Vincent smiled for the first time during the interview. "That's my leverage," he said calmly. "You'll never find any of them without me." Over the next 2 hours, Vincent admitted to killing 5 other women using similar methods. Jessica Turner, Brittany Walsh, Lauren Kim, Rachel Mendez, Vanessa Brooks. He described each murder with the same clinical detachment, as if he were discussing reports he had written for work rather than human lives he had taken. When asked why he killed these women, Vincent seemed almost confused by the question. "Because I could," he said simply. "Because it was interesting. Because most people go through life never really understanding their own power. I wanted to know what it felt like to have complete control over someone else's life and death." Thomas Brennan, Vincent's attorney, finally intervened to stop the confession. He recognized that his client had provided enough evidence to guarantee multiple life sentences. But Brennan was also calculating. Vincent had information the families desperately wanted. He knew where the bodies were buried. This information could be used as leverage in plea negotiations. Over the next few days, complex negotiations took place between the defense, the prosecution, and the families of the victims. The Denver District Attorney, Patricia Morgan, was faced with a difficult ethical decision. Colorado was not a death penalty state, so the maximum sentence Vincent Crawford could receive was life in prison without the possibility of parole. But the families wanted to bring their daughters home. They wanted to give them proper burials. They wanted closure. After consulting with all 6 victim families, DA Morgan made the decision to accept a plea agreement. Vincent Crawford would plead guilty to 6 counts of first-degree murder in exchange for revealing the locations of all 6 bodies. The sentence would be 6 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, ensuring Vincent would die in prison. But more importantly, 6 families would finally be able to lay their daughters to rest. On April 15, 2023, the plea agreement was signed. Vincent Crawford formally admitted to murdering Melissa Chen, Vanessa Brooks, Rachel Mendez, Lauren Kim, Brittany Walsh, and Jessica Turner. In exchange for his cooperation in locating the bodies, the prosecution agreed not to seek any additional charges and to recommend 6 consecutive life sentences. The body recovery operation began on April 16th. Vincent Crawford, in shackles and surrounded by armed guards, led authorities to 6 different locations across Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah. Each location was remote, carefully chosen to ensure the bodies would not be discovered accidentally. The first location was in Pike National Forest, an unmarked trail near Lost Creek Wilderness. Vincent directed investigators to a specific area off the main trail, where they found Melissa Chen's remains buried 4 feet deep. The recovery was difficult and emotional. Detective Ramirez was present when Melissa's body was finally uncovered. Despite being buried for nearly a month, there was enough remaining for forensic analysis. Melissa's remains were carefully excavated and transported to the medical examiner's office. Dental records confirmed her identity. The cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation due to strangulation, exactly as Vincent had described. Over the next 2 weeks, the other 5 bodies were recovered from their burial locations. Vanessa Brooks was found in a remote area of Rocky Mountain National Park, buried in a shallow grave that had been covered with rocks and vegetation. Rachel Mendez was recovered from Mount Evans Wilderness, buried near a hiking trail that was only accessible during summer months. Lauren Kim's remains were found in Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming, buried far from any marked trails. Brittany Walsh was located in Root National Forest, her burial site chosen for its isolation and lack of human traffic. Jessica Turner, the first victim from 2019, was found in Uncompahgre National Forest, buried deeper than the others, suggesting Vincent had refined his disposal methods over time. Forensic analysis of all 6 bodies showed similar causes of death. Each woman had been manually strangled. Several showed signs of having fought back, with defensive wounds on their hands and arms. Vincent's DNA was found under the fingernails of multiple victims, confirming his confessions. Soil samples from each burial location matched the locations Vincent had described. The timeline of murders was confirmed, stretching from June 2019 to March 2023. Vincent Crawford had killed a woman approximately every 6 to 8 months over a 4-year period, with periods of dormancy in between where he hunted for new victims and refined his methods. On May 10, 2023, Vincent Crawford appeared in Arapahoe County Courthouse for his guilty plea hearing. The courtroom was packed with victims' family members, media representatives, and members of the public who had followed the case. Judge Harold Mitchell presided over the proceedings. Vincent Crawford, wearing an orange jumpsuit and shackles, stood before the judge to enter his pleas. The charges were read aloud: 6 counts of first-degree murder, 6 counts of kidnapping, 6 counts of abuse of a corpse, multiple counts of identity theft and fraud related to the creation of fake profiles. The total number of charges exceeded 50. To each charge, Vincent Crawford responded in a clear, emotionless voice. Guilty. The word echoed through the courtroom each time he spoke it. Guilty. 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 After all the pleas were entered, Judge Mitchell asked if the victims' families wished to provide impact statements before sentencing. Every family had prepared statements, and they were given the opportunity to address Vincent directly. Robert Chen approached the podium first. He had aged visibly in the 2 months since Melissa's disappearance, his face drawn and his eyes filled with unspeakable pain. "Mr. Crawford," Robert began, his voice shaking. "You took our daughter from us. Melissa was our only child. She was our whole world. She wanted to help people. She saved children's lives every single day at that hospital. She was kind and trusting and good. You saw those qualities in her and you used them to destroy her." He paused, composing himself. "You stole Melissa's future. She wanted to get married someday, have children, make a difference in the world. She had so much life ahead of her. You took all of that. You took our future too. We'll never walk Melissa down the aisle. We'll never meet our grandchildren. Our family line ends with us because you decided our daughter was prey." Linda Chen was too overcome with emotion to read her statement. Katie Morrison spoke on her behalf, reading through tears. "Melissa was my best friend," Katie said. "She was the person I called when I needed advice. She was the person who celebrated my engagement with me. She was the godmother my future children will never meet." The last text she sent me was a heart emoji. She thought she was falling in love. Instead, she met a monster who had been planning her murder for weeks. Katie looked directly at Vincent. "You're evil. There's no other word for it. You're pure evil. And I hope every single day you spend in prison, you think about the women you killed and the families you destroyed." The families of the other 5 victims spoke as well. Each statement was a window into the devastating impact Vincent Crawford's crimes had on dozens of lives, not just the women he killed, but their parents, siblings, friends, colleagues, and community members. The courtroom was filled with tears and anger and grief that could never be fully expressed in words. Vincent Crawford sat through all of it without showing any emotion. He stared straight ahead, his face blank, as if he were listening to someone read a phone book, rather than the anguished testimonies of people whose lives he had destroyed. When all the victim impact statements had been read, Judge Mitchell addressed Vincent directly. "Mr. Crawford, I have presided over many criminal cases in my 30 years on the bench. I have seen violence, cruelty, and depravity. But what you have done stands out as particularly heinous. You hunted women like they were prey. You exploited their basic human need for connection and love. You showed no mercy, no compassion, no humanity." The judge paused, letting his words sink in. "This court shows you the mercy you denied your victims. Your life will be spared, but you will spend every remaining day of that life in prison. You will never know freedom again. You will never experience joy again. You will grow old and die behind bars, and the world will forget you ever existed." Judge Mitchell then pronounced the sentence. 6 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. The consecutive nature of the sentences meant that even if one conviction were overturned on appeal, Vincent would still have 5 other life sentences to serve. There was no scenario in which he would ever be released. Vincent Crawford was immediately transferred to Colorado State Penitentiary, the state's maximum security prison. He was placed in administrative segregation for his own protection. Even among criminals, those who harm women and children are considered the lowest form of life. If Vincent were placed in general population, he would likely be killed by other inmates within days, so he would spend his life alone in a small cell, isolated from human contact for 23 hours a day. Melissa Chen's funeral was held on May 20th, 2023, at the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in Denver. More than 600 people attended, a testament to how many lives Melissa had touched during her 29 years. Her co-workers from Denver Children's Hospital came, many of them wearing their scrubs to honor Melissa's dedication to nursing. Parents of children Melissa had cared for came, bringing photos and drawings their kids had made for the nurse who had been so kind to them. Friends from high school and college came. Members of the community who had never met Melissa but were moved by her story came to pay their respects. The service was both a celebration of Melissa's life and a mourning of the future she would never have. Photos displayed throughout the church showed Melissa at every stage of her life: a smiling toddler held by her parents, a confident teenager in her high school graduation gown, a proud nursing school graduate, a happy woman hiking with her dog Bailey in the mountains she loved. Katie Morrison gave the eulogy, struggling through tears to find words adequate to express who Melissa had been. "Melissa was light," Katie said. "She brought joy into every room she entered. She made sick children laugh. She comforted worried parents. She saved lives. And she deserved so much better than what happened to her." Melissa was buried at Crown Hill Cemetery in Wheat Ridge, Colorado. Her headstone was simple and elegant, white marble with an inscription chosen by her parents: Melissa Chen, healer, daughter, friend, gone too soon. At the burial, Robert and Linda Chen placed mementos in Melissa's casket, a photo of the 3 of them from a family vacation, Melissa's nursing badge, a letter they had written to their daughter, telling her how much they loved her and how proud they were of the person she had become. The funerals for the other 5 victims were held in their respective home cities. Jessica Turner was laid to rest in Fort Collins, Brittany Walsh in Colorado Springs, Lauren Kim in Cheyenne, Rachel Mendez in Salt Lake City, Vanessa Brooks in Boulder. Each service was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by these women. Each family struggled to process the senseless violence that had stolen their daughters. In the months following the convictions and funerals, the families of the 6 victims found each other through shared grief. They formed a support group, meeting regularly to help each other process their trauma and loss. They also decided to take action to prevent other families from experiencing what they had been through. In July 2023, Robert and Linda Chen established Melissa's Foundation, a non-profit organization focused on online dating safety awareness. The foundation's mission was to educate young people about the risks of meeting strangers from the internet and to work with dating app companies to implement better safety features. Katie Morrison left her position at Denver Children's Hospital to become the foundation's director. She felt she could honor Melissa's memory better by dedicating her life to protecting other women than by continuing to work as a nurse. The foundation developed educational programs that were presented at colleges and universities across the country. These programs taught young adults about warning signs of manipulative behavior, the importance of meeting in public places multiple times before going to someone's home, the need to tell friends and family about dating plans, and how to trust their instincts when something feels wrong. The programs used Melissa's story as a cautionary tale, with permission from her family, showing how even intelligent, educated women can fall victim to sophisticated predators. Melissa's foundation also worked directly with dating app companies to improve their safety features. In partnership with Tinder, Bumble, Hinge, and other major platforms, the foundation advocated for several changes. Identity verification requirements to reduce fake profiles, safety tools like emergency contact features and location sharing, in-app educational resources about safe dating practices, background check options that users could choose to run on potential dates. The foundation's efforts bore fruit. In November 2023, the Colorado legislature passed Melissa's Law, a landmark piece of legislation requiring dating apps operating in the state to implement specific safety measures. The law mandated that dating apps verify user identities through government-issued identification or other secure methods. It required apps to provide users with safety resources and education about meeting strangers. It established an emergency panic button feature that would immediately alert authorities if a user felt they were in danger during a date. And it required apps to conduct and disclose background checks on users who had been convicted of violent crimes. Melissa's Law became a model for other states. Within a year, similar legislation was being considered or passed in California, New York, Texas, and a dozen other states. The dating app industry initially resisted these regulations, arguing they were costly to implement and might discourage people from using their services. But public pressure was overwhelming. After the Vincent Crawford case and several similar cases of online dating murders that received national attention, people demanded better protections. The FBI also took action. They established a task force specifically focused on predators who use online dating platforms to find victims. This task force worked across state lines to identify patterns of suspicious disappearances and connect cases that might be the work of the same perpetrator. The task force credited Melissa's case with raising awareness of this type of crime and providing a blueprint for how to investigate it effectively. 1 year after Melissa's murder, in April 2024, Melissa's Foundation hosted its first annual Safety Summit. The event was held in Denver and attracted more than 2,000 attendees from across the country. The keynote speaker was Detective Sarah Ramirez, who had retired from the Denver Police Department to focus on teaching and advocacy work around violence against women. Ramirez spoke about the investigation into Vincent Crawford and the lessons learned from the case. "We have to change how we think about online dating," Ramirez told the audience. "It's not just harmless swiping and casual meetings. For predators, these apps are hunting grounds. They provide access to potential victims in a way that would have been impossible before the internet. We need to be smart, we need to be careful, and we need to look out for each other." The summit included panel discussions on technology and safety, presentations on psychology and manipulation tactics, and workshops on self-defense and risk assessment. Survivors of attempted abductions and assaults shared their stories. Law enforcement officials from multiple agencies discussed best practices for investigating crimes involving online dating. Representatives from dating app companies explained their safety initiatives and listened to feedback from users about additional protections that were needed. Melissa's Law had already shown measurable results by this time. Since its implementation, 47 individuals had been flagged by the background check system for having violent criminal histories. 3 of those 47 had convictions for sexual assault or domestic violence. By preventing these individuals from accessing dating apps in Colorado, the law potentially saved lives. The emergency panic button feature had been activated successfully 12 times in dangerous situations, allowing police to respond quickly and rescue women who felt threatened during dates. Vincent Crawford remained in prison, housed in administrative segregation at Colorado State Penitentiary. He had given several interviews to forensic psychologists and criminologists who were studying his case. The interviews were conducted with the approval of the victims' families, who hoped that understanding Vincent's psychology might help prevent future cases. Vincent was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder. Psychologists described him as a textbook psychopath, someone completely lacking in empathy or remorse. In the interviews, Vincent showed no regret for his actions. He spoke about his crimes with pride, viewing himself as superior to both his victims and the investigators who had caught him. When asked why he had confessed so readily, Vincent explained that he wanted credit for what he had done. "I'm famous now," he said matter-of-factly. "That's what I wanted. People will study my case for decades. I'll be remembered long after most people are forgotten." This need for recognition and fame was typical of many serial killers. They craved attention and notoriety, viewing their crimes as accomplishments to be celebrated rather than atrocities to be ashamed of. Vincent's lack of insight into the depravity of his actions was profound. He genuinely believed he was special, that he had done something noteworthy. The psychological studies conducted on Vincent Crawford added to the body of research on serial predators. His case became a teaching example in criminal justice and psychology programs. Students studied how he selected victims, how he manipulated them, and how he was eventually caught. The case highlighted the importance of digital forensics in modern investigations and the need for law enforcement to understand technology as well as traditional investigative techniques. Denver Children's Hospital honored Melissa's memory by creating the Melissa Chen Memorial Scholarship. The scholarship was awarded annually to a nursing student who demonstrated exceptional compassion and dedication to pediatric care. The first recipient was announced in May 2024. A young woman named Sarah Martinez, who had been inspired to become a nurse after reading about Melissa's story. "I want to help children the way Melissa did," Sarah said at the scholarship award ceremony. "I want to make a difference the way she did, and I promise to live my life in a way that honors her memory." Red Rocks Park, where Melissa and Vincent had their second date, installed a memorial bench in her honor. The bench was placed along one of the hiking trails with a view of the dramatic red sandstone formations. A plaque was mounted on the bench with an inscription: "In memory of Melissa Chen and all who trusted too soon, may those who sit here remember to trust wisely." The bench became a place of reflection for many people. Hikers would stop to rest there and read the plaque. Some would leave flowers or notes. The memorial served as a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of vigilance. Katie Morrison visited the bench regularly, often bringing Bailey, Melissa's dog, who had been adopted by Katie after Melissa's death. Katie would sit on the bench and talk to Melissa, telling her about the Foundation's work and about how many women they had helped. "I hope you're proud of what we're doing," Katie would say. "We're saving lives in your name. We're making sure you didn't die for nothing." The case continued to receive media attention years after Vincent Crawford's conviction. Multiple true crime documentaries were produced, each examining different aspects of the case. 48 Hours aired a special titled The Tinder Predator. 2020 presented an in-depth investigation called Swiping for Murder. Dateline NBC produced a 2-hour special called The Nurse and the Monster. A podcast series called Swipe Left for Murder became one of the most downloaded true crime podcasts of 2024, with 12 episodes examining every detail of Vincent Crawford's crimes. Netflix announced plans for a limited documentary series about the case, with cooperation from the victims' families. The series would tell the stories of all 6 women, not just focusing on how they died, but celebrating how they lived. The families hoped the series would humanize the victims, showing them as real people with dreams and hopes, rather than just statistics in a crime story. As time passed, The initial shock and horror of the case began to fade from public consciousness. But for the families of the victims, the pain never truly diminished. Robert and Linda Chen struggled with depression and grief that would never fully heal. They attended therapy regularly, trying to find ways to live with the loss of their only child. Some days were better than others. Some days they could smile, remembering happy moments with Melissa. Other days the grief was overwhelming, and they couldn't get out of bed. They found comfort in the work of Melissa's foundation. Every time they received a letter from a young woman saying she had made safer choices because of their educational programs, they felt Melissa's legacy was making a difference. Every time a new state passed legislation inspired by Melissa's law, they felt their daughter's death had meaning beyond the tragedy. But they would have given anything, traded any accomplishment or recognition, to have Melissa back. To hear her voice one more time, to hug her one more time, to tell her they loved her one more time. Vincent Crawford would spend the rest of his life in prison. He would never see the sky without bars in the way. He would never feel grass beneath his feet. He would never experience freedom or joy or human connection again. He would grow old in a cell, forgotten by the world he had so desperately wanted to impress. His name would be remembered only as an example of evil, a cautionary tale about the monsters who hide behind normal faces. Melissa Chen's story became a teaching moment for a generation of young people about the realities of online dating. Her beautiful smile in the photos that circulated in the media became a symbol of both the promise and the peril of modern romance. She represented the hope of finding love and connection in a digital age, but also the dangers that lurked behind fake profiles and charming messages. The question that haunted everyone who knew Melissa was, could this have been prevented? If the dating apps had required identity verification, would Vincent Crawford have been able to create fake profiles? If Melissa had video chatted with Derek Hoffman before meeting him in person, would she have noticed something wrong? If she had told more people about her plans, if she had insisted on meeting in public places for more dates before going to his apartment, if she had trusted her instincts when red flags appeared, would she still be alive? These questions had no satisfying answers. Victim blaming was not productive or fair. Melissa had not done anything wrong. She had been cautious within reason. She had told Katie her plans. She had checked in regularly. She had met Derek in public twice before agreeing to go to his apartment. She had been careful, but Vincent Crawford was more skilled at manipulation than Melissa was at detecting it. He had spent years perfecting his methods. He knew exactly what to say and do to make women feel safe when they were in mortal danger. The broader lesson was about society's vulnerability in the digital age. Technology had connected people in unprecedented ways, allowing individuals to meet potential partners they never would have encountered in their normal lives. This was largely positive. Countless happy couples had met through dating apps, but the technology had also created new opportunities for predators. The same features that made dating apps convenient, the ability to create profiles quickly, the ease of communication with strangers, the normalization of meeting people you know nothing about, also made them dangerous in the wrong hands. The challenge moving forward was finding ways to maintain the benefits of online dating while minimizing the risks. Melissa's law and similar legislation were steps in the right direction. Identity verification made it harder to create fake profiles. Emergency features gave users tools to protect themselves. Educational campaigns raised awareness of manipulation tactics and warning signs. But no system would ever be perfect. Determined predators would always find ways to adapt and circumvent protections. The ultimate defense was education and awareness, teaching people to be skeptical, to trust their instincts, to prioritize safety over romance, to tell friends and family their plans, and to recognize manipulation tactics. The message that came from Melissa's story was simple but vital. Trust wisely. Be cautious. Look out for each other. 5 years after Melissa Chen's murder, in March 2028, Melissa's foundation published a report on the impact of their work. The statistics were impressive. Educational programs had reached more than 150,000 young adults at high schools, colleges, and universities across the country. Melissa's law had been adopted in whole or part by 32 states. Dating apps had implemented safety features that were now industry standard. And most importantly, the foundation had documented 23 cases where women had recognized warning signs because of their programs and had avoided potentially dangerous situations. 23 women who might have become victims were safe because they had learned from Melissa's story. But the report also acknowledged the ongoing challenges. Online dating murders continued to occur. Predators continued to exploit vulnerable people. The battle against this type of crime was far from over. As long as people sought connection through digital platforms, there would be those who used those platforms for evil. The work of Melissa's foundation and organizations like it would need to continue indefinitely. Robert and Linda Chen, now in their late 60s, continued to lead the foundation. It had become their life's purpose, the way they had chosen to honor their daughter and create meaning from tragedy. They spoke at conferences, testified before legislatures, and met with families of other victims. They had turned their grief into action, their pain into protection for others. When asked how they found the strength to continue this work, Linda Chen had a simple answer. Melissa saved children's lives. Now we save lives in Melissa's name. It's what she would have wanted us to do. It's how we keep her spirit alive. The memory of Melissa Chen, the pediatric nurse with the warm smile and the kind heart, lived on not just in the hearts of those who loved her, but in the lives she continued to save through the foundation that bore her name. Her death had been senseless and cruel, but her legacy was one of protection, education, and hope. This story, like all true crime stories, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. Evil exists. Predators walk among us wearing masks of normalcy. The people we trust can sometimes be the most dangerous. But these dark truths are balanced by light. The dedication of law enforcement officers who never gave up on finding justice for Melissa. The love of family and friends who turned their grief into meaningful change. The courage of survivors who shared their stories to help others. The compassion of communities that rallied together to support victims' families. The work of advocates who pushed for legislative changes that made society safer. Melissa Chen wanted to make the world a better place. She did that through her work as a nurse, caring for sick children with compassion and skill. And in death, she continued to make the world better, sparking changes that protected countless women from suffering her fate. Her story ends in tragedy, but her impact continues in triumph. The legacy of Melissa Chen is this: love wisely, trust carefully, support fiercely, and never stop fighting to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Every person who swipes on a dating app should know her name. Every parent should tell their children her story. Every friend should look out for warning signs that something is wrong. Melissa Chen's name should be remembered not just as a victim, but as a catalyst for change, as a symbol of how individual tragedy can inspire collective action, as proof that even in death, a life of compassion and service can continue to save others. This is the story of Melissa Chen, a nurse who saved lives, a daughter who was loved, a friend who was cherished, a woman who deserved so much more than the fate she met. May her memory be a blessing. May her story be a warning. And may the changes she inspired continue to protect the vulnerable from those who would do them harm.